This video is not like other content on my channel. It is a long-form documentary that covers a long-standing Pikmin 3 mystery that has haunted the community for over a decade. We have provided timestamps below if you wish to view this video chapter by chapter. We found something big in Pikmin 3, something that will change how we view the game forever. This video is the final bit of closure regarding a decade-old mystery, the end of a long and exciting hunt. Today, we're exploring a lost story mode area hidden within the files of Pikmin 3, never before playable, restored back into the game after months of effort. Welcome to Pikmin Unearthed. Playing through the original Pikmin 3's story mode for the first time was one of the most enchanting experiences I've ever had with a video game. The game takes you through 4 well-crafted and exceptionally polished seasonally themed main areas with lots of things to keep you entertained and occupied. There's plenty of area to explore, towering, impressive bosses to fight, new and familiar Pikmin to encounter with a good variety of satisfying puzzles that use their wide breadth of abilities. There's new and old characters to rescue, play with, and learn about, and a bountiful bushel of fruit to collect. The game's pace feels almost perfect for the majority of the first playthrough. As you go from area to area, the game pulls you along a pretty linear tract, though you become more free to explore each level as you progress, acquiring new leaders and Pikmin types along the way. This journey eventually crescendos with the discovery of blue Pikmin in the Garden of Hope after rescuing Louie. With this final Pikmin type, the game fully opens up to you, and, with a complete roster of 5 Pikmin, you are not long after sent to the climatic encounter with the Plasm Wraith. In this 5th and final area, set in an imposing termite mound rising from a dry desert, a chase ensues that leads into the game's final boss battle. Once the final boss is defeated, Olimar is rescued and the game comes to a close. The credits roll and the story comes to an end. It feels like, just as things have fully opened up to the player, the game swiftly and politely wraps up. Following this playthrough, I would proceed to play through this game again and again, cruising through its main story and the many mission mode levels offered alongside it. With each completed playthrough, I became increasingly familiar with the nuances of the 5 main story areas put forth by the game's designers, and eventually, I started hunting for secrets. I tracked down the data files, I watched Olimar's secret memos, I found the hidden murals, I started looking for new ways to go about challenges, pushing against the game's linear structure. In all my years of playing it, I never grew disillusioned with the game, and the magic certainly never wore off. Yet, the longer I played, the more the pacing flaws became harder to overlook. The game has a ton of polished content that is hardly used in the main story. Several well-fleshed-out returning enemies such as Bulbear, Sharewigs, and the watery Blowhog are completely sidelined, only used in tiny amounts, pushed back into back areas, and used in a very limited capacity. In the right places, more of these enemies, which are not only finished but also very robust, could have helped inject a great deal of much-needed challenge into the game's levels. Even during that first magical playthrough years ago, it felt like the final climax of the game was rather sudden. It felt like, as soon as you unlock the blues and have a whole world open before you, the game urges you to sprint towards the finish line. It felt incomplete. As I started to interact with the wider Pikmin community online, I learned that I was far from alone in these sentiments. Today, I'm here to justify those feelings. The game does end abruptly, there's no two ways around it. As soon as blues are unlocked in the Garden of Hope, the game quickly pulls itself to a close. After years of speculation and rumors and theorizing, we finally know the reason. An entire 6th area was cut from Pikmin 3's campaign, situated at the end of the game. And now, nearly a decade after the game was released, we've found it, hidden away in the game's files. But before we get to that discovery, we have to start at the beginning. E3 2012. After over 8 years of waiting and speculation, Shigeru Miyamoto finally reveals Pikmin 3. The footage shown differs a bit from the final version of the game, pulled from an in-development beta, but it is very clearly at its core the same Pikmin 3 that would release a little over a year later. The game's footage focuses on mission mode primarily, showcasing the rock Pikmin and the tropical forest stage that would be made available in a playable demo and eventually be in the final game, though that's not all that was there. There are several shots in the E3 2012 trailer featuring an unidentified level that's nowhere to be found in the final game, not in the mission mode, and certainly not in the main story. This area is a very wet environment with a flooded layout. Every shot we have of this place shows that it is absolutely covered in water, with lily pads as a clear defining feature of the area. While at first it may appear to be an early version of the Twilight River, it has entirely different textures and theming from the autumn-themed area and a completely unique layout. As Mr. Miyamoto shows off the game on stage, we get to see more of this mystery level, and now looking back, it is apparent that this place never made it into the final game. Even stranger, it seemed like it was fully fleshed out and working on the console, surviving the game's development leap from Wii to Wii U, and not only that, it was selected to be one of the very first areas shown off for the game, polished enough to even make it into the debut trailer. And yet, in the final game, it's completely missing. But what is this mystery level? Where would it have been in the game? A long-running fan theory suggests it was a mission mode level reskinned into the Twilight Hollow. This is almost certainly false, though. None of the shots shown at the E3 presentation line up well with the final areas, and outside of the presence of water and lily pads, the Twilight Hollow hardly resembles this area. The long rocky river section that calmly flows past the skeeter skates and nectarous dandelion is entirely absent. The same is true of the section that requires the chain of captain throws onto mossy stumps over water. In other words, every important shot of this lost trailer area is missing from the mission mode areas. So we're back to where we started. A missing map with no context or explanation from the Pikmin 3 beta, clearly real and never finished. For some reason, following E3 2012, the map was cut from the game. Was it just made for the E3 presentation? Why not include that content in the game in some way? A lot of things changed since the first trailer, with characters such as Brittany completely changing their color scheme and character D completely disappearing. Did the game just evolve in such a way that this map was now obsolete? This mystery map, sometimes referred to as the Missing Marsh or the Lost River area, seems to have been forever wiped from the pages of Pikmin history, cut from this game, lost to time forever. Until now. The year is 2020. Pikmin 3, originally developed for the unsuccessful Wii U, is given a re-release onto the exceptionally popular Nintendo Switch, breathing new life into the game. Not long after its release, Pikmin 3 Deluxe would become notorious for leaving in a bunch of unused content that wasn't in the original Wii U release of Pikmin 3. There's unused enemies, fully implemented test maps, and even beta versions of levels that made their way into the final game, including an older, tougher, more open version of the Garden of Hope. Following the release of this game and the discovery of cut content within, the Pikmin community began to scour its files, searching for anything and everything hidden within it about the development of the original release. However, the unused level we are talking about today is actually exclusively found in the original Pikmin 3, lost inside of the original release on the Wii U from a decade ago. That means, despite all of the unused content left in for the deluxe port, the developers retroactively scrubbed all remaining traces of this specific level from the Switch re-release. This discovery started small, with a single thing out of place. We discovered this level by accident, following the wake of new discoveries in Pikmin 3 Deluxe. Gunnadahun and I were sifting through many of the discoveries found in Pikmin 3 Deluxe's content, such as the beta version of the Garden of Hope, when, after deciding to look through the original Pikmin 3's files for anything similar, Gunna found some leftover pathing data, left in plain sight but hidden from view. Initially, there was not much to analyze regarding this level. Only 2 gen files containing miscellaneous enemies and objects were left behind, alongside a broken path map. A path map is essentially a compilation of nodes and links between them, which dictate the route Pikmin follow when transporting objects. A Pikmin will always follow these paths exactly, unless acted upon by an outside force such as a player, enemy, or wall. There are also different types of nodes and links used to further customize these paths, such as having a Wing Pikmin-specific path, a path that can only be taken by Pikmin carrying small objects, or one used to determine where they wait for a lily pad. Although it might appear to be an insignificant aspect of a level, obtaining a functional path map for this project would be a game changer. It would provide invaluable insight towards the actual layout of the level's geometry and overall flow. But the path map we had wasn't functional. It wasn't even viewable. It was just some leftover junk data. So, is that the end of the road? Without a viewable path map, the project seemed finished. We're left only to speculate based on a handful of scattered enemy and object locations, but ultimately that's insufficient. This project appears to be dead. That's what most people would conclude, but Gunna is not most people. Gunna, taking a look at the broken path map, found something that was masking the missing map waiting to be revealed. Gunna speculated that the map wasn't entirely useless. There must be a way to bring it back to life in a viewable form. And so, Gunnadahun dared to do the unthinkable. Gunna delved into the 3,600-line path file, determined to diagnose the issue. To our surprise, he discovered that a single, simple typo made by Nintendo was the only barrier to accessing this map. With one simple fix, we finally had it, and it suddenly became very clear what we were looking at. The paths show us a sprawling level, much larger than any of us expected, with branching, overlapping paths, puzzles, arenas, and mazes. This wasn't just a simple missing map. This was a scrapped story mode map. With our newfound knowledge, we could now easily see that this level was filled with water, implementing many rivers, lakes, and bridges to cross them. We could trace out the exact shape and size of these bodies of water by taking note of node heights, lily pad paths, and blue Pikmin specific routes. As we compared this with enemy location, carrying paths, and other similar information, a clear picture of the level started to form. With a now complete view of the level's overall shape, the question still remained of what was actually in this area. Paths are nice and good, but it takes more than simple geometry to make a playable level. All Pikmin levels are crafted by implementing several gem files together to place objects such as enemies, walls, plants, and items. Basically, anything that isn't a part of the 3D model for the level is handled exclusively by gem files, and this is where we got the aforementioned enemy locations and other information. Some levels have a complex spawning system, sprawling multiple variations like the Garden of Hope, with a whopping 10 gen files that activate at different intervals depending on your story progress. Some simpler levels, however, may only have 1 or 2 gen files, like the Twilight River. Our Unearthed level follows this pattern established by the Twilight River, showcasing only 2 significant gen files. One file contains information about the landing site, onions, pellets, and water boxes, while the other focuses on enemies, objects, and plants. When examining these files, it becomes evident that there are 5 onions at the landing site, rather than the one singular master onion found in the final game. Additionally, there's a discoverable onion positioned at the top of the map. The properties of this onion suggest that it's designated for blue Pikmin and has the first discovered parameter set to 1, an attribute exclusive to onions discovered in story mode, allowing them to be activated. Not surprisingly, many of the objects referenced in their level are from a much older version of the game, one that couldn't simply be imported into a modern mission mode stage without minor adjustments. However, it should be noted that all edits to gen files were done strictly with compatibility in mind. Seeing everything together, we knew we had come across something massive. Looking at everything, we were able to line up various trailer shots from the E3 2012 presentation. The signs pointed towards this being the Lost Story Mode level from all those years ago. We had found it, and now it was time to explore. However, all we had was pathing information and gen files. Although that could tell us almost everything we needed to know about the level, giving us so much technical information about the shape and design, it still was hard to see since it was lacking a model. So for the sake of fully understanding this place, our team expanded. Gunnadahun and I brought on legendary Pikmin theorist and digital artist DavoGato to build the missing geometry. DavoGato has studied Pikmin series map design for ages and is skilled with area concept art. Together with our information, Davo passionately set out to revive our missing map, reconstructing the geometry from the ground up. Making a map from scratch using only gen file data and limited beta footage is no easy feat, and a lot of imagination and artist interpretation is required. That being said, the map we have now is very accurate as we can get, matching with all of the data we have on hand, taking into account everything we know from the trailer shots and from in-game data. Starting from a flat image created by Davo and Gunna, based on all available information, DavoGato drew shapes and walls around the paths and flowing water, keeping in mind where Pikmin could and couldn't walk based on the node data that Gunna had meticulously and painstakingly traced out. Enemy behaviors and bridge placements led them to shape the level in ways where dead ends would open to small pockets or large arenas based on prior map designs in the series. Gunna then provided Davo the data for the vertical height of the path nodes, which led to topographical elements like ramps and raised areas. Gunna took the information from Davo's rough map of walkable and non-walkable terrain and traced out refinements by hand on paper with the node data printed upon it, before adding in things like extra path data, objects and obstacles, bridges, enemies, and elevation in the proper places, all by studying the gen file. Then, they handed it back to Davo. After days of intense analysis and labor, including extensive back and forth with our team, a team that expanded from just Gunna, Davo, and I to also include physical model maker 3D Boy and later our editor Wigwaman, Davo finally finalized this 2D map of the area. As Davo and Gunna crafted this map and the entire thing came together, it became clear that, more likely than not, this was our lost E3 area. We had identified the location of each missing shot from the trailer, and we placed them where they belonged, tracking them down based on the data at hand. On screen now is the culmination of that process, the first complete recreation of the Forgotten Wetlands area from Pikmin 3's premiere. With the green light from the whole team, it was time to bring the 2D into the 3D. Using the 2D render as a blueprint, Davo began to model the geometry that would make up the final restored area. Meanwhile, 3D Boy, Gunna, and I were hard at work on our own projects. Based on the map data, Gunna realized that several unused, cut, or unfinished enemies were positioned on this map. Based on context from the series, enemy testing levels, and work-in-progress models from Pikmin 3 Deluxe's files, Gunna got to work restoring several of these unused enemies into the game. Meanwhile, 3D Boy put his physical modeling skills to the test, sculpting fully realized versions of these incomplete models in an attempt to in some way finish these incomplete and broken enemies. As they did this, I composed a unique piece of music that was made to get as close as I could to the Pikmin 3 style, while also representing this area. It was tranquil, yet foreboding, drawing from tracks such as the game's Rain theme, the Garden of Hope theme, and the Twilight River. I employed the Pick Pack, a set of samples from the Pikmin games put together by Waffles, a dedicated Pikmin sound guru who knows more about the audio aspect of the games than anyone else I've ever met. Using this pack, I was able to employ actual instruments used in Pikmin titles to create something as stylistically cohesive as I possibly could. While I worked on this, various thoughts about the music of Pikmin 3 ran through my head. If an iteration of this map really made it so late into development as to be shown off at E3, was its music already made? Was it scrapped too, or was it used elsewhere in the game? And have we already heard it? Could something like the game's Rain theme have been married to this area once upon a time, for example? I suppose this could be the case, though the theme is just as likely to be lost media if it ever even existed at all. All this time, Davo kept working on their map, iteration by iteration, starting with low-poly geometry, not unlike an N64 game. With each new version, the map was passed over to Gunna to implement into the game in playtest. Following each test, the entire team handed Davo notes on what did and didn't work, influenced by footage of Gunna's explorations. By using textures and images already present in the base game's existing maps, Davo gave the map a very Pikmin 3 feel, inspired by the textures and level design of the map as seen in the trailer. Months passed, and our team kept working on this project secretly. We kept the knowledge of our discovery close to our chest, believing that one big reveal with many eyes on it was more likely to be shared and to create the buzz that the discovery of this magnitude deserved. We spent hours pouring into the footage and playtesting the restored content, hunting for bugs, and resolving the issues that we discovered with our original prototypes, matching even closer to the original footage with every pass. Davo set out to make the area pretty enough to feel real, but not too complex that it would crash the game. Towards the end of the process, Gunna and Davo went back and forth a few final times with different versions to make sure the now detailed map played and looked correct. Map complete, Gunna put finishing touches on everything through decorative plants, foliage, and cleaning up the lily pad pathing to turn corners and tight spaces just right. It was finally here. Following several months of work from our team, the final level had been restored, recreated as accurately as possible given the information we had at our disposal. Looking at it as a whole, the water in this level appears to be generally shallow, resembling a creek or stream rather than a river, although it deepens in select areas. The map is very open and it has an "I can see it, but I can't reach it just yet" energy, much like the bomb rock or water-gated sections of the Forest of Hope in Pikmin 1. Also, similar to the Forest Navel, there's a centralized landing site with optional gates and multiple ways to optimize pathing with the use of tearing down obstacles and constructing bridges. That being said, this map's data only has a few winged Pikmin paths, making building the bridges or tearing down the proper walls a necessity in some places. In the E3 footage, the area can be seen to have a river, marsh, or swamp-like quality, and the layout provides further evidence towards this overall aesthetic. The gen files show that the map is covered in water and is also home to many aquatic, amphibious, and water-adjacent enemies. Even though our map is a fan recreation, we can still observe the overall flow and layout of the area. There's rushing water that makes an incomplete circle around the entire map, on which lily pads float. There's smooth coastlines to enter and exit the water, and there's steep coastlines the player cannot freely walk up. Scattered around the river are a handful of small ponds and deep basins that deviate from the flow, holding enemies and bridge shards. Two notable portions of this map are seen with the Bulbear family section and the Crawl Mat Arena, the latter of which requires a little effort to reach. Due to the nature of the enemies, the land-to-water slopes, and the data from the E3 footage, DavoGato chose to texture the map as a fusion between 3 biomes: Sandy River, Marshy River, and Rocky Slab. All 3 of these biomes would have textures similar to those that are already present in some form within Pikmin 3, so textures from the other story mode maps were used to get the look as close as we can manage within our time frame to something that could be in-game. Much like a GameCube-era Pikmin map, this map features no in-between hallways or separate areas and is all one body. This is to say that the area has no transitions. If shipped like this in the final game, this would be the only Pikmin 3 story mode area to have this trait. This leads us to speculate that this map information we're working from was from an old iteration of the Marsh map made prior to the version of the map shown in the E3 footage. An interesting quirk about this level is the lack of fruit. Typical Pikmin 3 levels have many fruit to collect, as it is the main collectible of the game, yet this level lacks any. That said, in its place, the area possesses numerous items labeled as Test Item 0 scattered throughout it, and some are even held by its resident enemies. This item appears to be a giant screw with very basic textures. Using other beta or test levels as reference, we can safely assume that Test Item 0 is a placeholder for fruit. In our recreation of this map, we opted to place fruit at these locations to get the intended effect. Overall, there are 6 different fruits found throughout the area, 4 of which are freestanding, 2 of which are inside of creatures. Adding these to the total present in the current day Pikmin 3, it brings us from 66 fruit up to 72. The game clearly went through several design iterations between here and then. Perhaps the number of fruit in the game was originally a round number, like in the past 2 entries with Pikmin's 30 parts or Pikmin 2's 200 treasures plus Louis. When this level was eventually scrapped, and as other areas changed, the number of fruit may have changed out to the current 66 we have today. It's entirely speculative, but I wonder if perhaps the golden variants of fruits were once intended to be used in an area, maybe this area, and they were cut as the development of the game progressed, limited only to mission mode. Perhaps they once yielded greater juice than other fruits, which may have provided a more limited supply than they presently provide in the final release version of the game. We just can't say for certain. We can see that, while this level is in some ways very unconventional for a normal Pikmin 3 level, it still embodies a lot of Pikmin 3's general design philosophies. To make progress towards what appears to be the main story objective, the player must complete a series of very long bridges to unlock access to different places in the map, and this mechanic establishes a clear order of operations that is meant to unravel this maze of a level, without much leniency for alternative methods. This is very much like the other Pikmin 3 story mode levels, which have the same sort of simplistic linear structure to them. That said, this map is a fair bit more open than other Pikmin 3 levels in terms of how the player goes about completing this linear objective. The entire right side of the map, however, doesn't contribute to the map's story-based objective. Looking at our overhead view, you can see that almost everything of importance is concentrated towards the left side. The right side has one long bridge that is meant simply to provide access to this side of the map. It is the longest bridge to build in the whole level, yet once you get over there isn't much to see. Only a toady bloister that holds a Test Item 0, so a fruit, and a few scattered enemies. That said, useless sections of areas to the main story aren't exactly uncommon in the Pikmin series, even in the final build of Pikmin 3. Famously, the Tropical Wilds has about half of the map that can be considered practically useless from a story standpoint, having only a few enemies and fruits to collect. We could possibly be looking at a similar situation here. Alternatively, this right section of the area might just have not been as finished as the left side. This whole area was, after all, scrapped during development and itself is an incomplete product. Not only that, the old iterations of the finished areas for the game are very different to what we have in their final state, clearly changing dramatically in development. Even if some version of it was finished, this still probably would have major changes due to this development metamorphosis. At the same time, this map is far more complex and open-ended compared to other Pikmin 3 maps. Though this is probably partially attributed to its unfinished form, it is likely also due to its place as a more challenging late-game map, similar to the Perplexing Pool, Forest Navel, or Distant Spring from prior Pikmin titles. The final version of Pikmin 3 lacks something like this entirely, and this map may have been intended to fill that purpose before ultimately being scrapped. Regardless of the reason, this level's difficulty is significantly higher than anything else encountered in the final game. Now that we've looked at an overview of this place, let's walk through it together following the path the player probably would take. As the player lands in the area, they are settled in a well-protected circle with a ring of barriers surrounding the landing site, much like the Forest of Hope from Pikmin 1 or the Twilight River from Pikmin 3. The first thing you'll immediately notice is the separate onions. At the landing site, instead of having one combined onion like in the final game, there are actually 4 separate ships next to the Drake, with space for a 5th blue onion as well. Presumably, these would work just as the onions from previous titles did, with the player moving to each in order to access the types within. These 5 onions are arranged in a spiral, creating a visually striking landing place when all types are acquired. That said, the player would have discovered this map prior to unlocking blues, as evidenced by their absence from the initial landing roster, along with some things that we will cover later. This starting area has 3 openings, though 2 of them are shortcuts blocked off by stone walls, requiring bomb rocks to open up. Because of this, the player is funneled through a central fork that opens up to the left and right. Should the player choose to go right, they are met by an enemy previously entirely unused in the game, a new cousin of the fiery and watery blowhog with a green-colored mouth that blows bubbles. These bubbles could in theory be very problematic for your Pikmin, since any of your units could become caught in them and end up being dropped in the water, drowning, especially given the level's coastal location. That said, we had trouble getting the unfinished bubble blowhog to properly function in our level, so he's being replaced with a watery blowhog for the time being. Continuing to the right from this point, the player comes across a flint beetle and dead ends, seeing a rock wall that appears to be somewhat strangely placed leading into the north end of the base. At this dead end, there is a lily pad jump node where players may move on and off from the lily pads in the water, something we will break down more in depth later. Returning to the site of the bubble blowhog and taking a left, the player comes across a second flint beetle and a pile of bridge shards leading to a bridge on the far west of the map, currently inaccessible by land. These 50 shards form half of this bridge, and the other 50 of the same color are located elsewhere on the map. These shards are the first indication of the level's clear dichotomy. Blue and wing Pikmin are much more useful here than their landlocked counterparts. That said, red, yellow, and especially rock Pikmin all have their clear uses here and must make their way across the treacherous terrain. In order to carry these bridge pieces to their destination, land-based Pikmin must hitch a ride on the southern lily pad on the player's starting island and drop them off using this lily pad to the west, catching a ride on a new lily pad at the same station before dropping off at the most northern node on the main island. This path would let these Pikmin run right through several dangers, including the aforementioned blowhog and these 2 yellow wollywogs in the water that are positioned in a way that they actually may threaten the Pikmin that ride the lily pads. Should the player move on from these bridge pieces and traverse south along the coastline, they arrive at the left path coming from the initial fork at the mouth of the base location and come across even more bridge pieces, this time 20 blue ones. These bridge pieces are used at the bridge right next to their location, though they don't come anywhere close to finishing the bridge, considering there are still 2 other locations that house 40 blue bridge pieces each. Right next to the bridge pieces are a watery blowhog and 3 sharewigs, enemies otherwise unused in the main campaign, except for illusory, wraith-created mimics in the formidable oak. These tougher enemies existing only in the oak has been a long-standing mystery in Pikmin 3, and this finally gives us the answer as to why. They were developed to be used here as well. Alongside them, there's a lily pad access point over here and an armored cannon beetle larva over here, making this section of the map a very tough encounter. Pushing past this, the player comes to a second stone wall leading into their base, this time guarded by a foe entirely absent from Pikmin 3, the decorated cannon beetle larva. While this creature doesn't actually have a model in Pikmin 3, we do have plenty of evidence that leads us to believe that this must be the creature located at this spot. First, the internal name is consistent with the Japanese name of the creature from Pikmin 2. It's labeled here as Miyabi. Second, test areas for enemies found within Pikmin 3's files have the same Miyabi enemy placed in exactly the same location as the armor and Arctic cannon beetle larva. Finally, it fits the level design. Regardless of the direction the player approaches from, it is able to aim a homing rock directly at the player, crushing all in the party except for the newly immune rock Pikmin and hard-to-crush wing Pikmin. After defeating the decorated cannon beetle, the area appears to dead end, but it's actually the endpoint for another bridge that we will talk about later. Now, having explored all of our central hub island, it's time to travel through the water that surrounds it on all sides. To do so, we'll set off at this lily pad point, the first available node on the main island, and we'll see where the water takes us. This is actually the second lily pad landing spot on the river, as there's one closer to the river's source. We'll get back to that one soon. The water overall flows clockwise, coming through from this path down here at the southeast and flowing northward. Hopping on this lily pad at the second node here, we flow downstream until we get to the next landing point here, where we disembark to explore. As we jump off, we're immediately ambushed by 4 sheer grubs. Fortunately, these sheargrubs are female and completely harmless to our Pikmin. As we move across this sharp coast, we notice that we're next to a cliffside with an elevated fruit placed above us, out of reach. Walking onwards down the coast here, we come across a ramp leading up towards that elevated cliff, and that fruit we saw earlier, the first fruit of the area. At the bottom of this ramp rest 40 blue bridge pieces. Tasking Pikmin to collect them reveals the utility of that first lily pad landing spot we skipped over earlier. At the farthest point to the east of this coast, the lily pad stops at its first node. Here, after defeating another female sheargrub, Pikmin carrying bridge pieces can hop onto lily pads and disembark back onto our landing island, dropping off the bridge pieces they carry. From there, they can jump back onto the floating lily pads and flow back over to the southern coast western drop-off point, creating a large loop. After all these bridge pieces are delivered, it's still not done. The final 40 pieces wait on this tiny island here, surrounded by water. Using winged or later blue Pikmin, we can finish assembling the dark blue bridge by bringing the remaining 40 pieces over. If the player hasn't cleared the enemies on their main island's southern coast at this point, the presence of these foes will create a dangerous environment for Pikmin carrying these pieces. At the same time, neglecting to explore the water will leave these pieces out of reach for the player. Design like this incentivizes a good split between exploring both the waters and the surface of this area. With the bridge completed, we climb to the top of the hill where it leads and carry back home the fruit that rests at the top. Behind it, we notice a cardboard box and we push it with our Pikmin, revealing an extension of the area. Moving in, we notice a fruit guarded by a Bulbear. These enemies are delightful to fight in the original Pikmin 3, but they're hardly utilized. This shows that, yes, they were intended to be used in more places during the main campaign than just the back room in the distant tundra. The player can choose to fight or run here, but either way, they're likely to dispatch this Bulbear at some point, collect the fruit, and carry it home. Moving on by hopping back onto the lily pad from any of the 3 nodes we've taken prior, we have 4 more stops we can now take. Flowing down the river clockwise, should the player choose to exit at the next available lily pad stop, they will arrive at a point to the south of another section of coast. Here, they can get to work on another bridge, this time with all 100 of the pieces together in one spot. Finishing this bridge creates an easy path back to the player's starting landmass, which will come into play soon. Just north of this bridge is a typical dirt wall, nothing too crazy for a Pikmin 3 level. After destroying it, the player has access to this entire section of coast, coming face to face with a typical red Bulborb and 5 of a never-before-seen sort of sheargrub. Our prospective player could attempt to fight this Bulborb, but the big beastie has a trick up his sleeve. These sheargrubs hitch a ride on the large creature, forming an armored shell that makes him much more difficult to defeat. To help the player take down this Bulborb, armored with armored sheargrubs, the designers were kind enough to provide 5 bomb rocks behind the beast, and these can presumably be used in the battle in addition to other places in the level. After the Bulborb is slain, he drops the 3rd fruit in the area. Right next to the Bulborb is a stack of 50 bridge pieces, and these can be collected to build the 2nd bridge on the south of this coast, connecting it up to an elevated patch of land. For the sake of understanding this level, we'll continue following the Lilypad River for now and literally cross this bridge later, though you would be able to complete it using these pieces and these pieces together. As we hop back onto the lily pads from the top node of this coast, I'd like to take a moment to highlight that this is one of 2 different ways that this section of coast can be approached. By using blue/wing Pikmin, or by entering the island by disembarking from the lily pad at the top of the island rather than the bottom, the player is able to flank the red Bulborb and attack with bomb rocks from the back, rather than the much more dangerous front. In doing so, however, they have to float via a lily pad through the water next to these yellow wollywogs that directly threaten their party as they coast along, or walk by them with aquatic Pikmin. This is an excellent example of how this level, despite being designed in a similar way to other Pikmin 3 levels, gives the player quite a few more options regarding how they would like to approach the challenges it sets forth. That's not to say that it's necessarily better designed than the levels that exist in that game as it stands now. There's something to be said about Pikmin 3's levels being very approachable and polished. Another thing to note about this level, there's clearly some bugs with the enemies and their placement. As you've probably noticed in this section by now, though the armored sheargrubs do work as intended and latch onto the red Bulborbs, they also have a tendency to glitch out and moonwalk into low orbit. Meanwhile, even recurring enemies that fully function in the final game, such as the yellow Wollywog, have problems here. While riding the lily pad, it becomes pretty apparent that they don't behave as intended here and suffer from clipping issues with the lily pad. The lily pads in the final game either occur in deep water or are in areas without enemies to prevent this issue. It's likely that this section would have had to have been reworked for this area to make it into the final game in order to accommodate for this. Curiously, there's reason to believe this problem was already fixed in a later iteration of this map. This section of the map is where this shot from the E3 trailer appears to be from, though the enemy placement was a little different, with skitter skates replacing the yellow wollywog and the nectarous dandelion soaring overhead in the opposite direction against the water's current. The skitter skates and wollywogs both play the same role and add a similar sort of threat to this section of the map, placed to endanger non-blue Pikmin on the lily pad, but the high mobility, long range, and delicate nature of the skitter skates compared to the deliberate and slow heavyweight wollywogs means that they're a much better choice of enemy to position in this location. As we resume our lily pad rafting adventure clockwise down the river, we will pass by a number of walpoles. These docile tadpoles are submerged underneath the water, meaning they are out of reach for both our landlocked Pikmin and our winged aerial aces. In addition, we see a fruit in a little cove to our left, also similarly submerged. We cannot get to this now, not without blue Pikmin. Further reinforcing and teasing this next type is a pellet posy growing out of the water. Drifting onwards, we pass 2 points of note. First, to the right, is our second to last node on our lily pad journey. This node connects to the most northern part of our starting island, directly adjacent to a bombable wall. It's our last chance to get back off onto the main island before our final node, when the lily pad will eject us. At the same time, on our left here, there's a little patch of land upon which rests a glass wall. Behind it, there are some pellet posies, a new enemy that we will talk about soon, 2 wall poles, and of course, last but not least, the blue onion. This was the location where blues were originally intended to be discovered. Not the Garden of Hope, but here. Once acquired, they'd eventually land back at the center point with the other onions, finishing out the spiral. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To get to them, we need to break this wall first, and that means getting rock Pikmin across the river. In order to do so, we need to get rock Pikmin floating on the lily pad with the leader, and this can be done from any of the prior nodes, though the shortest distance is to embark here, right where the bombs would be discovered. As you float along, you throw your Pikmin over, and you could toss a leader as well, or at least have one walk there through water, moving unfazed through the liquid that's lethal to your landlocked Pikmin. At this point, you can break down the wall and get to the blue Pikmin inside. That said, before we explore this new section, we need to take a look at what happens if any Pikmin or leaders are still left on the lily pad. If any passengers are left on the lily pad, perhaps because they were forgotten after embarking on an earlier node in the sequence, perhaps because they were in the player's party as they're exploring, perhaps because they were a rock Pikmin not successfully thrown over to break the gate in front of the blues, or perhaps because they were the leader actually doing the throwing. They will ride along until the final stop in the lily pad river, where they will be dropped off. Here, unless they are blue Pikmin, they are trapped. There's water on all sides, and though the island slopes down and leaders can come and go, the Pikmin cannot. That said, there is a way out. There's 2 circular pillars in the water here, and another outcropping of land flanking them. With some ingenuity involving captain throws, the player can get the Pikmin back across and over to the home island where they can... Hey, wait a minute, this is super familiar, isn't it? If you've seen the original E3 trailer for Pikmin 3 as much as I have, this trailer shot is probably burned into your memory. When we looked at this level's gen file, this seemed to be the place where this trailer shot made the most sense. For example, the river is flowing in the correct direction here. If this shot were from elsewhere in the region, the water would be flowing the wrong way and the lily pads with it. In addition, it's the only place where this shot makes any sense. At any other place along the river, either the elevation of the pathing data or the gameplay functionality of a throw like this doesn't line up with what we've seen from the E3 trailer. If that shot is in this area, this seems to be the place where it would have had to have been taken, but there's a problem. The direction in which the leaders are thrown is the opposite of what we see in the trailer. Even in the most extended version of the footage, there's not much that can be seen beyond this encounter, as if it's deliberately cut. In the trailer, it's used to show off the captain throw mechanic, captain auto-plucking after being thrown, and also the 4 new leaders in the game labeled A, B, C, and D. Though character D would eventually be cut, it's notable that there could have been 4 leaders for captain throws in the game at this point in time. That said, this puzzle, in its completion, only needs 3, though it could be a bit tedious to do so. If we assume that the throw direction was opposite in the trailer footage from how the area would typically be played just for the sake of demonstration, a lot of things fall into place. This is a puzzle about rescuing your stray Pikmin, and the goal is to get them back into play, requiring a whopping 3 leaders to do so. While not strictly necessary, any Pikmin stuck here in your squad at the end of the day would likely still get back safely, it's a way to punish the player for carelessly leaving Pikmin on the lily pad and to put a dent in the number of Pikmin they can have alive and active on the field without first solving this puzzle to get them back into play. To get started, the player must first throw their Pikmin from the drop-off island onto the first of 2 stumps. Following that, they must throw 2 leaders. One of those 2 leaders throws the other and the Pikmin to the next stump. From there, the leader at the second stump may throw the Pikmin off to a bigger island. Finally, to get the Pikmin off of the bigger island and back onto the mainland where they'll be accessible, the player must captain throw a leader from the top of the starting island over to the island where the Pikmin are, and from there throw them back over to the mainland. If this sounds like it would be tedious, especially taking in the captain throwing mechanics we're used to in Pikmin 3, that's because it would be. In Pikmin 3, captain throwing is not only fairly limited, but also much more finicky than, say, with throwing their Pikmin subordinates. This is because throwing a leader is a lot weaker than throwing a Pikmin, and this is especially true with vertical throw height, presumably to prevent throws that can cause a player to get out of bounds, escaping the intended play area. That said, in the original E3 trailer, we see that captain throwing mechanics were quite a bit different. For example, captain throws were notably much higher, and even in the shot just before this one, we see 2 leaders thrown up onto a ledge from the tropical forest that they could never reach in the final game. Still, all things considered, we can line this up side by side with our shot from that E3 trailer, playing this section backward for the sake of footage. If we do that, it seems to line up perfectly. When working on this part of our map, our team realized something. Gameplay elements present in our map also appear in the mission mode area, Shaded Garden. Upon close inspection, it's not a direct match for our map. While a tree stump leader throw puzzle is present, the layout of the stumps isn't exactly the same. The directions are different, there's a lack of lily pads, textures don't match, and plant types are a little different. However, the Shaded Garden map in mission mode may have inherited some components from the scrapped story mode map, such as the stump throwing mechanic or the general biome. Much like the tropical forest used assets and themes from the Garden of Hope, the Shaded Garden may have inherited from its story mode counterpart, but remained as a mission mode map once the story counterpart was removed. Tangentially, DavoGato pointed out that if our marshy river map was present within the final game, each non-DLC mission mode area present in the original Pikmin 3 on Wii U would line up with a theme present in each story mode map aside from the formidable oak. The Tropical Forest and Garden of Hope as springtime backyard themes, the Silver Lake and Distant Tundra as winter snow themes, the Thirsty Desert and Tropical Wilds as summer sand themes, the Twilight Hollow and Twilight River as fall arbor themes, and finally the Shaded Garden and the Scrap Marsh as wetland river themes. While there's no definitive proof that our area was in some way the template for a part of the Shaded Garden, it's certainly possible. That said, the Shaded Garden also uses elements from the caves from Pikmin 2. Perhaps it is overall an homage to spaces that didn't make it into the final game. Now that we've rescued our stray Pikmin from the final drop-off point, it's time to unlock the blue Pikmin. As we shatter the gates with our rock Pikmin, we're able to enter this chamber where the blue onion rests. Here, we encounter a new variant of Wollywog, which we have dubbed the Calcified or Crystal Wollywog. After dispatching it with rock Pikmin, the player can pluck their blues and begin building their navy. This is one of the strangest sections of the map to me. Though the rocky Wollywog you encounter when initially entering the room can be easily bested with rock Pikmin, you could probably skip it, and that would leave it as a massive danger towards your fledgling blue population. Especially since the wall poles in the pond where the blues are encountered might lead one of your earliest blues directly into the Wollywog's leaping range if not dealt with. On top of that, there's a second Wollywog on the northern section of this chamber, too far away for rock Pikmin to deal with unless the player risks them going swimming. Based on its rocky or crystalline design, we were unsure what kind of texture would be on his body, we can assume it was designed to be a Wollywog that was best dealt with using rock Pikmin, and without them, he is now a massive threat you cannot attack in number since you won't have many blue Pikmin around to deal with him. You could use bomb rocks to deal with this foe, but they are few in number on this map. I don't have a particularly good theory for why this is as it is, but regardless, the functionality of the room remains intact. You collect creatures and pellets to begin building up your blue army. Then, as you go outside, you begin to go through the water, collecting more creatures, pellets, and that submerged fruit from earlier. With the blues unlocked from this chamber, the player finally has the ability to access some of the completely submerged sections of the game's map, from this area and from beyond. There is a cluster of bridge pieces available under the water here, just outside of the chamber where blues are discovered. They're used to build this bridge here, though it's a bit of a journey to get there, blocked initially by this submerged dirt wall. It's something that should be breakable only by blue Pikmin, but by the laws of having land nearby, it probably can be cheesed with earlier Pikmin types if Pikmin 1 speedruns are anything to go on. After busting through here, the player is faced with more bridges, several skitter skates, and the consequences of their actions. Flanking the player from both sides are 2 cannon beetle larvae, though one of them is the decorated cannon beetle encountered earlier. Should the player have already dealt with him, he won't provide a problem here. The other beetle, which is just a regular rock thrower, will have to be taken care of in order to safely build the bridge. This stone-hurling larva rests at the top of this coast and presumably flings rocks down on vulnerable blue Pikmin as they approach. He can be flanked by following along the river path and taken out so that all of these bridge pieces can be brought over and assembled. There are 2 more enemies in the region as well, a water dumple and a toady bloister, and they are guarding bridge pieces and the penultimate fruit of the area respectively. After finishing the bridge, you have a clear route to bring the fruit home, and with that, we've searched the entire river, save for an outcropping pond on the left of the map. Remember that bridge on the west side of the area that I said we'd cross later? Now's our time to do so. While technically we could have done this as soon as the bridge was complete, I wanted to tackle the challenges that were external to the main path of the area before moving on to its toughest encounters. Immediately after crossing this bridge, there is a terrifying chamber full of 2 spotty Bulbears and 9 of their juveniles. It's sealed away by a bomb wall, though once it opens, the player can move into one of the most dangerous encounters in Pikmin 3. But before we go there, we're going to go into what may have at one point been one of the other most dangerous encounters in Pikmin 3. Before we do that, let's grab this final fruit from up here. After defeating this bloister and pushing this box here, theoretically it should seal the walkway and let Pikmin and carryable objects pass. Now, in our implementation, using the present-day box model, it's too short to fit, but it seems like it was supposed to fit really snugly here, creating a walkway over. Theoretically, we don't actually have to push it to get our squad over there, especially by using Captain and Pikmin throws, but that's something we'll gloss over for now and address in a minute. The entire implementation of this box puzzle is rather odd, but I'll talk about that after we come back. For now, we walk over this box-made passageway and to this arena at the end. Like most Pikmin 3 levels, the end goal is a boss that must be bested. Coming to this arena in the upper left corner, we come face to face with this area's never-before-seen boss. Actually, wait, that's just a bug-eyed Crawmad. What's he doing here? Perhaps he was just a placeholder for the boss. The fact that there are no Hermit Crawmads in the level could be a sign of this. Bug-eyed Crawmads tend to share areas with their smaller cousins in the final game, though perhaps this wasn't always the case and they were more of a differentiated variant of the same base type of enemy. Maybe another boss was planned for this area, but it wasn't yet finished, so the Crawmad was put there temporarily for testing purposes. Perhaps the Quaggled Myreclops was once intended to occupy this arena, but after the area was cut, he moved over to become the second boss in the Garden of Hope. Alternatively, we could have had an entirely original boss occupy this place, but maybe that boss never saw the light of day. That said, could the Bug-Eyed Crawmad have actually been the boss of this area, but eventually was turned into and polished up as a mini-boss when the area got scrapped? It's totally plausible. All of the level design clearly has the player working their way over to this area, requiring them to collect blues and then work their way down the river to access this fight. Frankly, it takes more effort to get to the Bug-Eyed Crawmad here than it does to get to some of the bosses in the final game, with the sand-belching Meerslug the chief offender among them. Let's assume he actually was the boss for the area for a minute. The Crawmad boss was probably pretty far from completion at the point that this specific iteration of the area was from. Clearly, this was an older build of the game. Presently, the Crawmad is a lot simpler than other bosses in the final version, and the arena is way simpler too. Perhaps at one point it could have been planned for him to emerge from different holes in the floor and ambush players based on his behavior in the current game. Even still, there's no evidence for this at the moment, and he remains rather static. For an area so late in progression, it would really make him seem like a pushover. If he was a pushover for so long, perhaps instead of buffing him, they instead demoted him to a sort of stronger enemy. This wouldn't be the first time this happened in the series either, as the same sort of downgrade happened in Pikmin 2 with the fiery Bulblax being demoted from boss to regular enemy, something evidenced by its Piclopedia icon texture size being shrunk in-engine from boss to regular enemy, and by its name using the more imposing Bulblax title rather than the Bulborb title of less powerful grub dogs. Regardless of the reasoning, the Crawmad is clearly in this boss arena now, and as it stands, he is the major goal of the level. After steamrolling him with our Pikmin, our less than imposing boss is defeated. After his spirit rises from his body, the Crawlmad drops an item known as Test Item 1. Much like fruits were represented by Test Item 0, Test Item 1 seems to represent some sort of progression item, perhaps like the data gluttons in the final game. What gets really interesting though is the item's model. Test Item 1 appears to be a giant pill-shaped pod with Louie housed inside. A common thought among our map restoration group is that this is an early stasis pod concept, an idea that would evolve into the spacesuit auto-sleep function that is present in Pikmin 3's story mode, to make Olimar and Louie function as a carryable object. What makes things even stranger is that, despite all signs pointing towards the bug-eyed Crawlmad being the big boss of the area and Test Item 1 as its reward, there actually is another instance of Test Item 1 in the area, dropped as a reward for defeating a random Bulbear in this southern area that we will get to soon. Clearly, whatever it is, this item is meant to be more rare or important than the generic fruit stand-in variant, as it is only held by higher level enemies in the far corners of the map. That said, it's unlikely that there are two Louies, or even that these two test items, though identical, even represent the same thing. Could it possibly be some sort of story-related item? Could this once have been both Olimar and Louie, separated in this map? Or could one of these have possibly been a stand-in for a suit upgrade like we see in the final game hidden across the game's map, and the other one represent Louie? Unfortunately, all we can do is speculate. As we leave this room, I'd like to explain the biggest mystery surrounding this level. It's bigger than Test Item 1, bigger than the true identity of the boss. This mystery spans the entirety of this level actually, and like apparently everything else here, it's a rabbit hole that only goes deeper the more you look into it. Here's the situation. As mentioned earlier, you can reach the boss chamber by throwing leaders and Pikmin and skipping the box pushing puzzle entirely. The thing is, this box puzzle is the only thing that is preventing the player from getting to this boss before getting to blue Pikmin. All of the shards required to build bridges that would allow you to get to the boss from on foot are found on land, and nothing is stopping you from fighting the boss with a squad of land-bound Pikmin and then using wing Pikmin to airlift him and his drops after his defeat back to base. In fact, pretty much the only thing blues are really required for at all in this area is the rightmost section of this area, which just seems dumb, honestly, for a blue-focused area. Perhaps this is why this area was shelved. Why design a blue-focused area for their discovery only to have them have almost no function within that area, even as essential keys? And that's when it hit us. This level is from an old build of the game. That much is abundantly clear from all the pathing data. We know we had 5 Pikmin types at this point, as evidenced by the onions, but exactly how robust were the wing Pikmin at the time of this level's development? Their abilities may have changed quite a lot in the time between this iteration of the level and the final game. We may have been holding this level to 2013 wing Pikmin standards when these wing Pikmin are actually from, at the very latest, summer 2012. If wing Pikmin were more limited, perhaps they couldn't fly off the ground and carry things simultaneously at one point. This would mean several bridge pieces here actually require blues and make this whole area much more blue reliant. It would also help balance out wing Pikmin, considering they are very powerful in the final game and can be used to complete puzzles designed for yellow Pikmin as well as blue Pikmin. Maybe this was just changed in the final build to show off the processing power of the Wii U. In many respects, from the juicing scenes to the environment to the Plasm Wraith, the original Pikmin 3 can be seen as a Wii U tech demo. Alternatively, perhaps wing Pikmin could only fly when carrying items or in combat, or just for a limited time in general. Either way, it makes significantly less logical sense than having the wing Pikmin able to fly at all times, though it may have been how the game was balanced at the time of this map's development, and frankly, how it had to be in order to have things run well on the Wii, if they were designed at that time. The only alternative hypothesis I could think of for how blues could be at all useful on this map is that wing Pikmin actually came after blue Pikmin, but laying out the game's progression like that simply inverts our problem. If this were the case, there's literally nothing left for wing Pikmin to do here that blues cannot do. That said, it's unclear as to whether or not this was actually the case. Only speculation based on how this map is designed alongside some other factors. For example, how the wing Pikmin are depicted behaving in the concept art for Pikmin 3, or the fact that wing Pikmin do have a few leftover states that allow them to ground, for example when riding on lily pads. Even so, it could explain why this level was inevitably cut. Once wing Pikmin became more powerful, perhaps after switching over to the Wii U, this level no longer served its purpose and blues were moved to the Garden of Hope, an area we know went through significant redesigns based on the leftover beta versions in the files of Pikmin 3 Deluxe. We now turn our gaze to the final and toughest part of this area, a place that our team has nicknamed the Bulbear Den. This portion of the area is in itself a solution to another long-standing Pikmin 3 mystery. It explains why the Bulbear is so underutilized in the main campaign as it stands. This room is full of Bulbears and dwarf Bulbears which patrol its grounds, and while Bulbears are mostly absent from the main campaign, this area features an abundance of these very dangerous predators, much as the Distant Spring did in the original Pikmin. Unlike their restful counterparts in the Distant Spring, however, these beasties are very much active, alert, and dangerous, and this creates a very lethal area of the map. Though the player can actually first see this part of the map earlier from this Bulbear-bearing chamber to the east, it's blocked off by a cardboard box which can only be opened from within. In order to enter this chamber, the player must bomb down this rock wall and bring their squad in through this northern entrance. Here, they do battle with a whopping 9 dwarf Bulbears and 2 adult Bulbears. If that doesn't make things bad enough, the area is also home to an enemy named the Ogane, believed by our team to be an unfinished version of the Glint Beetle from Pikmin 2, this time with the ability to distract a player's Pikmin and lead them into danger, much as the iridescent Flint Beetle from Pikmin 1 does. We asked 3D Boy to sculpt this model-less enemy, and this is what he came up with. Ledges in the area provide the player with 2 groups of 5 bomb rocks, and 5 more can be found on the ground. Though to get to them, the player must be swift and skillful, considering the great dangers that lurk in this chamber. That said, the ledges also provide players with 3 carryable berries that can be used much like bomb rocks. These berries serve to distract enemies, something that seems to be a great asset in this dangerous chamber. After fighting their way through this chamber, the player is rewarded with the final drop of the area, another test item 1. Pushing away this box, they have a clear shot now to bring the second Louis pill home, completing the entirety of this area. This area answers so many questions about the overall flow and structure of Pikmin 3. Knowing that this is the Lost Story area, even that such an area existed at all, puts so many things into perspective. From the moment the tree branch is pulled in the Twilight River and the player receives the call from Louis, the final game feels like it sprints to the oak, only taking a pit stop in the Garden of Hope to pick up blues, as if by obligation. If this area was present after the Twilight River, it would fix the pacing. Adding this area back into the campaign could dramatically help with Pikmin 3's biggest flaw, the underutilization of blue Pikmin and the overall short length of the campaign. By adding an entire new main area into the mix, Pikmin 3 would have been, on release, definitively the longest Pikmin game in terms of main areas, not taking into account the extra padding that caves add by literally stopping or reducing the flow of time. Our uncovered area already takes a significant amount of time to complete when first exploring, and considering that what we had found was probably an early iteration due to factors like the split onions, a lack of area transitions, and old pathing data, the version of the area that was actually shown at E3 would likely have been significantly more developed, especially considering it was up and running just a little over a year before the game's launch. Regarding Pikmin 3's showing at the E3 2012 event, there was actually a hands-on demo that attendees got to play. This demo showcased a playable early build of the Tropical Forest Collect Treasure mission mode stage. This stood out to us, as if we could find this demo, it would be an incredibly simple way to try and date our level. If the E3 mission mode stage was still intact within the game's files, we could compare the structure and naming conventions with our level and get a good idea of how old our level was in comparison. Pikmin 3's development spans over a decade, so many things have changed between different builds of the game, one of the more major ones being path nodes. There's also some secondary markers such as bridge naming conventions, onion parameters, and stray Pikmin parameters. If we could just match one of these variables up with our story mode map, then we would have a slightly better picture of when this level was scrapped in development. Lucky enough, this E3 demo still exists hidden within the files of Pikmin 3 for Wii U, discovered by Gunnadahun after a bit of digging. With this find, Davo and Gunna started combing through all available information to see if there was anything to be learned from this lost demo. Gunna pointed out that, while small, the bridge naming scheme did vary from this demo to the final build, more closely resembling the naming scheme found in beta levels such as the Beta Garden of Hope and our Unearthed level. This is far from conclusive evidence of it being built around the same time as the E3 demo, but it is almost certainly a big clue that at least suggests that this story mode level was still being worked on in the months leading up to E3 2012. And it makes sense that it would be. Before being scrapped, this was the proper home area for the Blues. This was the 5th area in the campaign that pads out the runtime before the Formidable Oak. This was the level that filled the world map screen's marshy, unhighlighted region, approximately where Europe would be in the real world, a space that could easily have been used for the formidable oak without needing to add the extra landmass that the area occupies in the final game. But for some reason, it wasn't, a constant source of speculation. It just makes so much sense that this place would slot in here. This area would complete the seasons, with not only the classic winter, spring, summer, and fall represented, but also the wet and dry seasons through the dichotomy created between this place and the formidable oak. As for the enemies, this is the home for so many unused or underutilized foes in the final game, including crystal wallywogs, armored sharegrubs, bubble blowhogs, decorated cannon beetles, watery blowhogs, shearwigs, and the mysterious ogane. This is a glimpse into an ambitious, early version of Pikmin 3. We had finally found it. But there's still that haunting question. Why was it scrapped? From the very moment we first discovered it, our unearthed area has given us a glimpse into a world of pre-release Pikmin 3, and we got to see a lot of things that have changed since that time. Some of these changes are rather meaningless aside from quality of life. For example, the levels being planned with 5 onions rather than a single master onion to make pulling Pikmin from it easier. Could this level have been removed because there wasn't enough time to fully polish the area up to the standards of present-day Pikmin 3? Or was it cut for simplification and streamlining of gameplay? This is something Pikmin 3 suffers from a lot. The rounding of corners and smoothing of content in favor of a manicured, mechanically perfect experience rather than a long but clunky one. It's the largest contrast between Pikmin 2 and Pikmin 3 from a fundamental design level. This could have been the reason it was trimmed. But the more we looked into this level, the more it seemed to have been scrapped due to a fundamental incompatibility with Pikmin 3 as it stands, rather than a lack of polish. Looking at it, this level was simply designed for a different game than the one we received. As discussed earlier, the wing Pikmin must have once functioned dramatically differently in order for this map to have served its purpose. That said, they're not the only type that seems to have drastically changed. There's a distinct lack of electricity in this map. This, alongside some other discoveries that we came across during this project, discoveries that will probably find their way into a future Unearthed video, implies that, at this point in development, yellow Pikmin may have been used solely for their high throw height, digging ability, and bombs. Maybe the carryable distraction berries from the Bulbear den were just something else for yellows to do at this point, giving them more carryable items to use, and once electricity returned, they were axed from the main game. Maybe the proximity bomb that made it into the final game was also once intended solely for yellows. Either way, if 2 of the 5 main campaign Pikmin types were fundamentally so different at this point in development, perhaps these changes necessitated major redesigns that ultimately led to this map being scrapped. On top of this, there's other things such as the disappearance of Character D, our 4th leader, from the game, shown off at E3 2012 at the same time that this map and the Kopayats were first presented. Perhaps this map and some of its more difficult elements were cropped and trimmed with the game as it evolved. Perhaps it was a combination of all of the previous reasons that led to this map being shelved, and the Garden of Hope serving double duty as the home of both the game's second and final Pikmin types. Regardless of why it was ultimately scrapped, this map had gone missing for years. It was a long-standing source of mystery and discussion in the Pikmin community, shown off at E3 but ultimately gone from the final game. Many mysteries sprung from the at times almost sloppy removal of this map from the game, clearly an important part pulled out from the larger whole, leaving the game fundamentally unfinished. Now, thanks to the effort of our team, this map is once again playable. But I'll leave that for Gunnadahun to talk about in the follow-up video that's going live on his channel not long after this one. So, this is where our story ends. We've unearthed and resurrected the playable area that we all thought was lost to time. Along the way, each of us on the project treaded paths that brought our headspaces closely in line with the mindset of the game's developers, as each task required us to think and problem solve just like the Pikmin team themselves. And thus, we happily can say, after months of work, for the first time since E3 2012, welcome home to Pikmin 3 River Area. It's so nice to finally meet you. This project would not have been possible without the following people. Gunnadahun, data miner and level engineer. He's making this map available on his channel. Go check it out. DavoGato, the map artist and modeler. 3D Boy, the physical modeler. Wiggleman, editor. Waffles, creator of the instrument Pick Pack. El Camo, creator of the Pikmin 3 Deluxe Necromancy Pack, which was the basis for the restored AI of the Armored Sharecrubs. All of my Patreons during this time, Mocha Kofa, Tentacles, Von Briner, Fernando Arista, Zepson, Avis, Gary the Gamer, and everyone who stuck around and supported our team during this time, and of course, anyone who took the time out of their day to watch this massive project. My name is VantageEmblem. Thank you so much for supporting this project we've been working on for months, and I hope to see you guys very soon.